Before we begin today's interview, we want to provide some important context. On January 8th, Adam Burg and his family lost their home and all of their belongings in the tragic Eaton Fire in Altadena, California. Adam, his wife Christina, their 3 children, and even their pets were able to evacuate safely, but the fire left them with nothing. In addition to their personal loss, Adam's IT consulting business was also severely impacted, as he lost critical tools and equipment used to support his clients. In this episode, Adam generously shares his story with us, not just the events of that day, but what it's meant for his family, his work, and his perspective moving forward. If you're moved by what you hear and would like to help, we've included a link to the family's GoFundMe page in the show notes. Every donation, no matter the amount, goes directly to the Burg family to support their recovery and rebuilding efforts. We're honored to share Adam's voice with you today.
Welcome to another episode of Command Control Power. We are honored to be joined once again by Adam Burg of CALSO Technologies. Adam, welcome back to Command Control Power.
Happy to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to see you again. We got to see each other in person out at ACES I guess it was just last month as we record. We chatted a little bit about what you've been through, and probably a lot of our listeners know, but do you want to just take us back a couple of months and share about the tragedy out in LA that you suffered through?
Yes. First of all, I just want to say thanks to everyone. I am very lucky to be in the profession and in the community that I am in. I never expected it, but the outpouring of support in all ways from this community was out of this world. Incredible. The offers were for all things, just knowing that if I think I would react the same way and offer the same kind of support, but you guys, anyone in the community, ACES, just the Mac admin, Slack, everywhere, that was something very positive that came out of this, just knowing how awesome this community is. So it's good to know that as colleagues and members of it go through things like this, like everyone's got each other's back. So it was amazing. No other word for it. It was just awesome. But yeah, in terms of, everyone knows by now, but in January 7th, January 7th, my family received evacuation orders in Altadena, California. Previously, I want to say January 1st, January 2nd, Pacific Palisades on the other side of the city in Los Angeles were already dealing with a pretty large wildfire with evacuation orders and all kinds of wild stories coming in the news of people abandoning cars and fighting fires around their houses and just unprecedented things that you could never imagine having to have happened, like in a very populous area. Yeah. We run CALSO from our home. We did run our business from our home. Last time we spoke, that's where I was. We were about 1.5 miles from Eaton Canyon, which is where the fire started. Maybe 2 miles, but close enough, obviously, to see it from our front yard. And yeah, I'm from the Midwest, so I'm very familiar with tornadoes and thunderstorms and snowstorms. But here in Los Angeles, it's always, California in general, it's earthquakes. Joke that we had the best earthquake go bags and supplies you could imagine, but that doesn't help when it's a fire. And also the warning systems, whatever, won't go too far into what I think about that, but we were home, school was canceled. The winds were outrageous. We have the Santa Ana winds here. We had up to 100-mile-an-hour winds. Our garage had a lattice on the side with a bougainvillea giant plant on it, and had already by 1:30, 2 o'clock ripped off and made like a basketball-sized hole in the side of the garage. So we were thinking, great, we have to deal with we're renters too, so I'll get to that later, but that's actually positive to our situation. But already thinking like we're going to have to contact the owner to discuss what's going on with the property, and just dealing with looking outside and seeing like the fruit trees completely bent over. Wow. And they made an announcement that power was going to be shut off. I think it went off at around 4 o'clock, which is still light out, so it was okay. So we prepped for like a dark evening, candles. We do a lot of camping, so we have decent camp lights, things like that. There's a couple stores nearby us. I don't know if you're familiar with Altadena, but it's just this beautiful place up in the foothills north of Pasadena, but just on the foothills of the mountains. So no big grocery stores, no major chains, but there's grocery outlet, and Aldi was close enough to us where I just ran and grabbed a bunch of water from Aldi. Grocery outlet was actually closed. And so I went in and just grabbed enough water because we couldn't get water out of the fridge anymore. I'm not a faucet drinker. So we just prepped ourselves for a long night of whatever, board games and crafting by candlelight.
Yeah. Adam, not to interrupt, but was there any concern at that point about the threat of
No.
fire in a very real sense? No. Yeah.
Not
so
at all. Not at all. No.
Not
And
concern.
but it's probably ignorance from my part just because I have no experience with it. I've never been close to one here in Los Angeles. We've had them, but I've just never been close enough to where it directly affected me. So yeah, coming back home and just getting settled and just trying to figure out what we're going to do. Power's out, internet's out, right? I can't work really. A little bit of cell coverage. It was spotty up there to begin with just because of where we were. And I don't know, I think we probably got I went outside actually to get more camping gear, lights, and looked down our driveway, which had a direct line of sight. And I can share some photos if you guys want to post them with the recording, but I could see the fire, like just a strip of bright orange red in the canyon. And so at that point I had the realization, like, this is way more serious than I thought at first. So I went in and gave my wife a look and just said, come with me. And I took her outside and just said, it's worse than what we originally thought or could have expected. And again, it's the wind, right? The wind is just out of control. And so I continued doing what I was doing and getting stuff ready. I think at 6:30 we had our first warning, like watches, phones, everything goes off. And it's basically said, you're under evacuation warning, get your pets ready, get your elderly ready, like that kind of thing. But nothing.
Again, for a second, Adam, I find it really shocking that your first alert about the concern was your own eyes. It seems to me there should be some kind of earlier warning for pack your stuff, and maybe if you want to get ahead of it, leave now, or at least be ready to evacuate, let alone the first warning coming. Was that an hour after you saw for yourself?
No, it was very close, right around the same time. Close? Yeah. So 6:30 probably was the 6:30 p.m. That's Tuesday night on the 7th. And then so I pulled her and I said, hey, we have to kind of get ready for this. And then I think strangely, like simultaneously, we got the alert that said, get yourselves ready. Yeah. As calmly as possible, just told the kids, look, we may have to go to a hotel tonight, pack a bag, put your things that you care about most. If you have any valuables that you can't be without, put them in the bag. Let's just get the things that we know are most important to us. And then tried to have my wife do the same thing for her and I while I was still trying to figure out what we're going to do. We have 2 cats. One is terrified of everything. So she was hiding most of the time. We have a tortoise, which was in a big cage. So the cage had to be moved. So we just hung out. My daughter told me this afterwards. I didn't realize, but my daughters shared a room upstairs. There was just one room, one set of stairs that went upstairs, and then there was a nice room for them with the bathroom. And my middle daughter I don't know how to say this. She is more emotional, I think. And just looking, like going upstairs and having, unfortunately, a window that pointed directly to the canyon. And this was after we had said, we don't know how bad it is, trying to downplay it a little bit just to keep them calm and not overreacting, knowing that we have to react and deal with it, but not trying to freak anyone out. But then when they went upstairs to do that, right out of the window, it's even worse than what I saw through the driveway. You could see just the whole side of the mountain on fire. And so then it was just, for those two, my older daughter's a little more able to deal, and she just helped the other two. I have a young son, he's 7, who was kind of oblivious, still thankfully a little bit oblivious to everything that was going on. But together, the 3 of them packed bags together and did what they needed to do. They helped get the cats. The one cat they helped me with. The other one, after by I think it was 8:30, we got the alert to go when it's pitch black. So like we're walking around with these extender pole lights that we use when we camp and whatever else we could use. Stupidly, I didn't even think to get our headlamps, and I don't even know if I'd tried, I would have been able to find them, but just trying to figure out what to take, because we all thought we would be able to go back. Like, we have friends further west in Altadena where there's no way this fire should have ever made it to, but because of the winds and the perfect storm conditions, they lost their houses and they left with nothing. So absolutely nothing, just what they were wearing, full intention of being able to go back. Yeah. So when we got that, it's evacuation order at that point, you got to go. And it was never a point where we saw any police or any person of official status coming and telling you, but I had gone outside and it was just blowing winds and it felt hot and smoky, and the neighbors we were all talking to each other. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? And it was just, I could just tell these people have been there for decades, some of them multi-generation families. And if they're leaving, I'm not staying. It's like, at this point, if they think it's that bad, then it's got to be that bad.
Yeah.
So I went back in and just said, well, you guys got to get out of here. We had 3 cars. We lost one of the cars in the fire, which whatever. But I put my wife and kids and the pets we have a Land Rover, an old Land Rover. So luckily that had room for everything all at once. And then at 8:45, I just said, go, because I still had to go deal with the CALSO part of all of this. And so I just said, go, please don't keep the kids here, go. So they left. My mother-in-law's in Pasadena, so they drove to her house, which is like a 15-minute drive. So nice that was there. And then I just went back in, and I had no business continuity plan for something like this. And I guess thank you for doing this, because everyone should have some kind of something in place. But luckily, most of our systems are cloud-based, and I was able to we don't have servers, we don't have RAIDs like back in the day. I used to do a lot of XN, so I had a rack of all that stuff. But luckily, it was just a laptop, a couple Mac Minis. I forgot a laptop. I forgot a Mac Mini that we use for VMware stuff. But obviously all the paperwork, anything sentimental from the business or from my history as an Apple consultant or working for Apple was there. I'll share it with you guys as well, but I have a collection of Apple stuff, and I had just put it up like over the holidays. It was all in poster tubes and boxes up until the holidays, which would have been like super easy to grab, right, and run with. But I had just put it up on one old wall. I had covered it. I think you saw it, Jerry, possibly.
I did. Yeah.
So I grabbed my first edition iPods, first edition phones, like a few things that I knew, like worst case, I at least have these things, but I can't find them, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
So I think they're in my mother-in-law's garage somewhere, or they're somewhere, but yeah, they haven't turned up 4.5 months later.
There was a brief casual discussion on Slack, and we were talking about old iPods, I think. And so Adam posted this picture that he's speaking of. That was your office, part of your office space. Yeah. And he had the vintage stuff all set up with a lot of the Think Different posters. And one of the Slack members chimed in, maybe we could collectively as a community replace that collection. But my first response was, that's great, but do you have the room for that? Or are you still in between locations?
So I'm actually working out of this office that you see me in here. A really good friend of mine, Bill Griffith, runs a business called Sleeper 9 Productions. They do awesome event work, large scale AV stuff for big enterprise companies. They also do, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Homeboy Industries here in Los Angeles, but it's
definitely
a huge nonprofit, and they do their annual events for them. So they do these massive, so we joked about trying to get them to take over the JAF productions or like the different conventions that we all go to. That'd be a gold mine for them, but they're awesome. He's awesome. He's a good friend. They actually their house made it, but they have yet to be able to go back to it. Oh. That's where I was hinting at earlier. I lost my house, but I was renting, and I don't have to deal with the land. I don't have to deal with any of the stuff. I was able to just luckily we had renter's insurance. We had business insurance. So I was able to we cut and pivot right away. Whereas a lot of people who owned their houses, whether they lost them or didn't lose them, are still dealing with insurance, still dealing with the fact of whether they can go back or they should go back. Some people have gone back because they don't have a choice, but others are choosing to go through the full process of remediation and cleaning, and they're finding lead and mercury and asbestos and all kinds of stuff in the soils and in soil in the ground and in the just from their old houses. Like our neighborhood was all 100-year-old houses. A lot of the places that survived, even though they survived, the windows were old or Bill's garage door ripped open and everything in the garage was ruined. Everything in their house was ruined, essentially.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different stories that from friends that we have that are in one of our camping families that we go with that are real good friends with our kids, just bought a house in Altadena and still had a U-Packet crate box in their driveway. They hadn't even unpacked yet.
Wow.
I feel lucky. I don't feel lucky that I have had to deal with this, but I feel lucky in the sense of like where we fall in the scenario of the different scenarios that have played out.
If you're listening to this too, in Adam, when this catastrophe first happened, he posted pictures of his home. Your home there's nothing for you to go back to. It was completely leveled. It doesn't matter whether that's the silver lining, is that you didn't own it and you had renter's insurance and you had business insurance if they pay and make good on it. But ultimately there was nothing, there wasn't even a shell of something for you to go back to.
No, and for those who rent and have standard business insurance, it only goes to a certain amount. It doesn't matter how much you want to cover. There's limits to how much they'll give you. If you want more, you have to go get some kind of like ride-along policy or whatever they call them. So luckily, they paid out right away and we got, everything, but it's nowhere near total loss. That's impossible. And no one... I guess I shouldn't say anyone, but I wasn't insuring our home or even the business for total loss. I was insuring it for, what if somebody steals a laptop?
Yeah, worst case scenario.
But
nothing like
water
this.
Leak.
In your mind's eye, you could not imagine this being the worst case scenario.
Yeah, someone broke into our garage and managed to steal everything out of the garage. Whatever. There's scenarios that played through my head before this, but never once was it full loss. And this is like... Level. Completely gone. We had a couple brass planter pots, like potters in our yard. We were able to get those, some brass like benches that we had in the back, strangely, and a hummingbird feeder, which didn't burn. And I took that more just because I was angry and $20 bird feeder.
When the black box survives and they say, why don't they make the whole plane out of the black box?
Yeah, exactly.
Why don't you make the whole house into a hummingbird feeder?
Right.
And you'll be totally...
I don't know if I shared this picture. Actually, I know I did on LinkedIn, but if you guys are familiar, there's a new hot playground game called Gaga Ball. And it's like... It's like it looks like a UFC pit, but like half-height fence. And the kids get in there and it's dodgeball, but you have to hit below the waist and it's bouncing and it can hit off the walls and stuff.
That's interesting.
It's really fun. We got one for my son and my daughter for Christmas, but it's made of rope and vinyl. So there's no way that thing survived in the backyard. It had a few little burn spots in it, but like, why is that thing there? A little wagon, super random thing. So it's strange how it went through because we have a real big hedge on the north side of our house and my neighbor's house survived, but his back house didn't. And he had a pool, so he spent the whole night, Tuesday through Wednesday, taking buckets and putting out spot fires around his house and the neighbor's house. So there's a lot of stories like that where people just decided to post up and save their house, which, I think that's amazing. But he also then spent the next several months of his life having to drive back and forth to make sure people weren't breaking into his house because there was no power, there was no security camera, no alarms, nothing like that. And then you can't clean your house and move back into it because everything around you is going to be, there's going to be construction. But even once they clean it, as soon as the construction starts, it's all going to be in the air again. So the insurance companies are making people wait until the neighborhoods are cleaned and construction starts before they'll actually clean a standing house. So people are having to just go. I've heard people say, "Oh, we went and wiped things down," but it's pretty toxic.
Because you're talking about. I think you made this point maybe at Aces in one of our conversations. When you have a forest fire, wood is burning. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's putting things in the air that we know what those things are. They're still
Right.
not great for you, but it's wood basically that's burning, and plant matter and things like that. When you have entire neighborhoods on fire, it's burning not only, like you said earlier, what's in those homes, but like everything from all the fires, all that smoke that's blowing over. That's all going to then settle. You have to just assume that all of that smoke is really toxic, and all the particles from it are toxic. And how are they? What's the status now? Have they gone in with bulldozers and they're cleaning things out, or?
Yeah. So there has been a couple of phases. Just to like piggyback on that, like all the household chemicals, right? Like all the stuff that we use day in day out. It doesn't matter if you're buying natural products or what. That all is gone. It burned and it went into the air and now it's in the ground. And strangely, one of the things that I found, we had a shell of our garage, like a half wall was there, and I had a propane tank. We moved and the grill was built in, the line was built into the gas of the house, so we didn't need it anymore. And I was just waiting for a friend to come pick it up, and it's leaning against the garage, still intact. So it didn't blow up. But like that kind of stuff, like just everything that you can think of. Just look around your house, chemical wise, it's all in the air and the soil. In terms of cleanup, like I can only speak for Altadena, and I haven't been in a long time. I went up several times immediately after the fire. We had to go up and meet a guy from FEMA to do like a virtual walkthrough, which was ridiculous. We can talk about that later if you want. But the government offered to clear your lot for you down to the slab. So they would come in, Corps of Engineers, whoever it was, would come in and just clear everything out. And then some people chose to do it that way. Some chose to do it privately. It depends. If you think about it, if you're doing it in mass and you're doing it to try to get to a deadline, how well is it going to be done? So I think some people may have just gone that route because it was free and you already have lost so much. A lot of the people in our neighborhood chose to do it the private route just because part of the federal, and I'm not an expert, I'm not 100% on all of this, but I know part of the biggest concern for some of the areas up there is like the trees and like being able to preserve some of the landscape and the habitats and things like that. So I know with the federal part of it or the government doing it, they just were bulldozing and let's clear it. Let's get it to a place where these folks can start to rebuild, which I appreciate. But a lot of people wanted to try to preserve trees. So they had expert folks that knew about whether a tree is able to be preserved or whether it's unsafe, marking things. So if you go up there, you see all these really strange markings all over the place about different elements of things that survived or didn't survive. And there's a really great map early on. This is a little bit of a tangent, but it was a map house by house of fully destroyed, partially destroyed, or still standing. And it was like red, half red, and then like green, right? So you could go and zoom in and see, if you hadn't been up there, you could see like what properties around you made it, which didn't. And then there was a corresponding tag on a tree, and our house was red. So we had a tag on our tree, fully destroyed or whatever. I don't remember what the exact words were. But yeah, it's different phases for clearing out. We're on a thread with our neighbors still just to stay in the loop of what's going on. And they're finding these toxic elements upwards right now. One neighbor had gone 4 inches deep and still found it. So they're having to scrape another 4 inches off their entire lot to see then what's the next, like where does it become somewhat livable. And the big problem was that we never have rain here. And of course, right after the fire, we had horrible torrential downpours. And normally I would be the guy outside, rain on me, please. But it brought everything from the exposed hillsides, mountainsides, rushing down. We had neighbors that had sandbagged around their houses. So yeah, it's strange. They say by next year, the anniversary date of the fire, they're going to be done with the federal cleanup.
Wow.
But the reality for me, and I think for a lot of people, is there's just no way it can be not toxic still.
Yeah.
And there's just so much to clean up. It's just such a devastating.
Yeah.
It was apocalyptic. Like it looked like something out of a film. It's indescribable unless you've seen a video or actually driven through it. And we went back up the day after. We went back up in the morning, my wife and I, to see if we could get to the house to salvage anything, because we knew at that point that the fire was raging and nothing was probably in our area was going to remain. Wow. And we couldn't get past a certain part of our neighborhood just because of how thick the smoke was. Wow. And the post office was on fire. The hardware store was on fire. Aldi, which is where I had gone to get water, was on the roof was on fire. So to see Lake Avenue in Pasadena and Altadena, which is a main street that goes up and down, on fire all the way down to Washington, was crazy. It's just not something you could have imagined happening if you had lived there. Even the people that I know that have lived there, like that canyon has been on fire before, but it's never been on fire with winds like that. And it's never made it into residential. It's always just burned, like you said, forest fire. It's burned up in the canyon, up in the mountains, but it's never made it to residential. Just unprecedented all the way around with, I just keep saying perfect storm, because all of the things that kind of came together that night made it what it was.
Yeah. And the people from the community, your neighbors and surrounding communities, was it an organized, not organized like we think of, but were people, I'm sure people were panicked, but was the exiting and just getting away from the fires, was that chaotic?
No, it was very chaotic, and I would even say sporadic. Like I would look out and just see like a car flying out, leaving the street, because we lived on a very residential street. Most of Altadena is pretty slow moving, and you would look out and just see a car tearing out of there. And then by the time I had worked to get everybody into the car and went outside, neighbors we were running up to each other. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? And then one by one, you just see the cars backing out of the driveway and taking off. Wow. There was no organization in terms of someone taking control and organizing it. And a lot of people didn't even know or weren't home or on vacation. It was the holiday, just after the holiday, so a lot of people hadn't returned. We found out probably a month later that I'd never met them, but a couple of houses north of us, their house survived, thankfully, but there was an elderly couple in their 90s, and they had not received any of the alerts. And so they woke up in the morning at 6 a.m. to their yard on fire and the whole neighborhood burning, because it started 2 a.m, my neighbor said, is when the houses really started to go. And thankfully, the husband was able to get the wife into the car and they were able to get out.
Oh my God.
But just stuff like that, where there was we never had a fire truck on our street the whole time, never had a police car on our street. From what I was told, there was no presence of, and I don't blame them. A lot of people are always, where were the fire trucks? There was 2 giant fires happening at the same time. Resources were already allocated to the Palisades, so they were driving. That's a long drive. That's an hour and a half on a good day. It can be longer depending on, and it's a giant truck, so obviously it's caught up. But they did their best. I remember driving, like I said, on that street, coming back from trying to get to the house, and you just saw like the faces of these guys and the firemen, just you can't do anything. Like if next time you have a windy day, go out with your garden hose and just see what it does. You can't spray anything properly. Yeah, so it was just wild. It's hard to describe it. It's really hard to describe it.
And thank goodness you had a safe haven to bring your family. It's so difficult when you have a family, your 3 children and the pets, and you had a place to go. But so many families, I would imagine, had to find lodging for weeks.
Yeah, we were only there that night. We ended up leaving. We went to a hotel about 40 miles south, 40 minutes, I should say, not miles, south of LA in Norwalk, because several of our friends from our school group had gone. Oh. And so we all just went, and it was crazy because I had gone back up right before we left for the hotel. And there were, in my mother-in-law's driveway, there were embers falling, not burning embers, but you see at a campfire and something fall next to you and it had burned, right? That it's ash or it's like a piece of some wood or something that didn't burn all the way. So there was no place that was safe at that time within a certain radius because of the wind still. And I went back up because I figured at this point, maybe I can get to the house just to see. We still didn't know the outcome. And so they left, my wife and kids and everybody left for the hotel. And I just said, I'm going to go check and see. And I was able to get all the way up there. And that was more surreal than anything, because like you're coming up when you see everything on fire, and then you turn, and just driving up there was a cemetery on fire, and then there's a whole block there, fine, nothing's wrong with it, and then the next block every other house is on fire. And so it's just, there's no rhyme or reason to where the fire had made it. And I got up to the house, and we live just north of the Altadena Country Club, and that was completely gone. And that was the moment where, that's a huge little plot of land and big complex. But then when I turned, I see houses in our neighborhood there, and there's one burning, but the rest of them are okay. And then when I came around our street and went up, everything was gone. It was just both sides of the street. There's 3 houses out of probably 40 that made it. And one was like, the one side was totally scorched. The other 2 were okay.
Wow.
Yeah. At that point I got out, just parked the car and got out, and that was the video I think I posted where I'm walking down the driveway. And that was, it was still stuff on fire. You could hear it, you could smell it. And the craziest thing, and someone said it really well, every house had a chimney.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you noticed was all the chimneys were still there. So it was almost like grave sites of houses, because the houses were completely gone, but you just see this, in some places, 2-story chimney or a 1.5-story chimney still there, hadn't tipped over, hadn't burned. It's just whatever. And then come to find out, in our area, there's a specific type of tile that was used in a lot of the architecture on chimneys. Mm-hmm. And there's this awesome group that took it upon themselves to go into these properties with the owner's permissions and take the tiles out and save them. So a lot of cool things like that. Sorry for that tangent, but that just reminded me, they decided, I don't remember what kind of tiles they are. There's just beautiful designed tiles.
So I would imagine that a lot of the homes in the area were what they refer to as arts and crafts homes.
Yeah, like we were in a Tudor.
With the stonework, I'm showing my.
Yeah, they're all different.
The style,
no, same. My brother's an architect. I should know all this stuff, but I don't.
Is it?
Not as many craftsmen.
Craftsmen, yeah, exactly.
Not as many,
arts and crafts,
not as many craftsmen in Altadena. There's a whole neighborhood of them in Pasadena, which is called Bungalow Heaven. It's amazing. But like our neighborhood was a lot of Spanish style homes with the Spanish tiles, a lot of old Tudor homes, just beautiful 100-year-old homes. And the best part of Altadena from an architectural standpoint is that none of them were the same. There's no cookie cutter neighborhoods where somebody bought it all and just decided to make them all the same. You see a little bit of that, and there's some newer developments where it's condos or big apartment complexes. Most of the neighborhoods were very unique, very different. Pasadena is very similar to that too. So like you're going to see the rebuilding of that. Our neighborhood has agreed, the owners of the buildings or the houses in the neighborhood have agreed to build as closely to the original drawings as they were able to. But a lot of them, lots have been put up for sale and sold to developers or whoever. So who knows what's going to be put into place. So it's never going to be the same, unfortunately.
Tell us a little bit of what life was like when you went to this hotel or motel where you congregated with these other families. How long were you there, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, so we were there 5 days. Our kids have historically been in a homeschool program where it's a hybrid thing where they're on campus with kids a couple days a week, and then a couple days out of the week they are either home or they're on field trips or art museums, wherever they're doing something in a group with the other kids that are in this program. So a lot of the folks, everybody that came was part of that. At first, there were 4 families. We were the only ones that knew the fate of our home. It was great. Actually, that's not true. One of the families just left because of the air quality. Their house was fine, and it was actually on the other side of the freeway, so it was never in danger, but really just left because the kids had asthma or whatever, they wanted to get out for clean air. So the first night we knew we didn't have a house. We all went out to dinner, which was surprisingly helpful, but it was great because the kids were together, and we had rented a second hotel room where the kids all just had a sleepover that night. And we all parents congregated, and just, there's nothing really to say because we were in the situation we were in. The other families were up in the air, not knowing what was going on. But it was nice to have that
camaraderie,
Yeah,
sense of community of people.
And we still have that. It's interesting not having to go through this by yourselves. I've always said if this just happened to us, we have such good people around us that our house would have already been rebuilt. Someone would have, they would have put their efforts together and made sure we were okay. But because we're all dealing with it, we're all like leaning into each other rather than one leaning on someone else. We just can't do that right now because even like you had said earlier, some people had nowhere to go. And like normally you'd call like your best friend and just say, hey man, we're in this situation. Can we crash tonight? And there was none of that. It just didn't exist because all of our friends, the closest people in the area were all dealing with the same thing. We went down to the hotel. I was at Hilton. They were great. They opened up the ballroom and let the kids run around. We had breakfast downstairs every morning. That was a strange side story there. We would come down and there's like 15, 16 of us. And in the bar area where the breakfast was served, like a buffet, all of the TVs just had fire right on the TVs. That's everybody was watching news. So like I just had to say, I went up to the waitress and said, look, we're here because of that. Can you like turn it to something that isn't this? Yeah. But they were really great. Another awesome part of that was the hotel we were in was also housing most of the firemen that were I shouldn't say most of them because there were so many, but a bunch of the firemen that were from the Palisades fires. Wow. So they would do shifts. They would come in. The elevator always smelled like smoke, which was not great for us, but whatever. These guys would come in just black, covered in soot, maxed out, and they would have 12 hours or 18 hours off, and then they would go back for 2 days. And then they would come back. So we saw 3 shifts, essentially, like at the end of one shift and then a full shift. And then, so I had a lot of opportunities to talk to these guys. And that's where that fire hose thing came, because he said that nothing they're doing in the Palisades was worth anything because you couldn't do anything. There's no amount of effort to spray a hose at a fire in 100-mile-per-hour winds is going to do much. So containing it wasn't realistic at that point. But yeah, it was good for the kids to see that there were people actively helping
on the job
and saying hello to them, being good to them. But the other part of being in the hotel was, you don't have a chance like within your home group pod, your family, to deal with it or talk about it because you're in a hotel room, there's kids, and the kids were always together and playing and had always taken over some room as we took our Switch. Most families had taken something for the kids, like a video game console or whatever. And then I remember just one night, and this might be a little much, but just one night it was finally just our family in our room. We didn't have anybody sleeping over, and everyone said the same thing. It was like just a mess of a night. You know what I mean? Like my son went to sleep, but the girls were just like not consolable. And as a father, parent, whatever, someone who's responsible for somebody else, the hardest thing ever is like not being able to do anything about it. When I didn't burn the house down. I didn't cause any of this, but it's heavy when you can't do anything. And I give my kids a lot of credit because they're good with their emotions. They're good with their words. But just telling them you fully have the right to feel, do, say, be however this happened to you. Now, 4 or 5 months later, this is history, right? We lived through this. As corny as that sounds, like we went through something that early on, like I said, like I've never met a person that's house burned down in my life. And now I know 200. I know so many people that either have lost their house, lost part of their house, lost their garage, or won't ever be able to go back to their house. And I just said that to them, like in a way, like you are lucky in a sense that you have other people that you can talk to about how you're feeling because they feel that way. Otherwise, it's just too abstract to have gone through something like this and not have anyone to like really, really open up to. And I think the more I kind of process and deal with it, like I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for the way that my kids have handled it. And I'm lucky, and we're lucky to have the friends that we have. Even in the situation where we're all dealing with this crazy trauma, we can still count on each other. I'm in this office because I have a really good friend who provided it to me. There's just a lot. And again, the community, the Apple community is a very special thing. I can't say enough about it, but yeah, that was the hardest night, was just knowing that There were no interruptions coming. There was no kid knocking on the door. There was no like ask to play a video game. It was just like raw. Like I think we all realized at that moment that we're not in a hotel for a vacation. We're in a hotel because we really don't have anywhere else to go. And that's pretty heavy.
Sure. You immediately think of, obviously, there was probably too many people for anyone to provide counseling, but you're victims. You're like 9/11 victims in a way. Yeah. You're just completely in shock. And it's still with you now. It's not like it doesn't go away. And I can't imagine living through anything like that with my family or even on my own. It's just, but like you say, you have people, a community of people who have this shared experience. And as you were talking, it sounds crazy to make these random abstractions, but it's almost the people who went to Vietnam and fought or any war. Yeah. That there's this shared, this shared experience that you all have. Yeah. So it's just mind blowing to talk to you today, and I'm sure you're very much it's with you today. And so thank you for sharing, being here and being steadfast and just being able to talk about this, because it must be extremely challenging for you.
Yeah. So just to back up, the environmental refugees are what we are considered, what the term that was thrown around, because realistically fires happen, but just the circumstance of the weather and the dryness here in California, like we hadn't had rain for months. Yeah. So anybody who questions climate change, whatever, have them give me a ring. We'll talk about it, because it's such a thing. I've been here 10 years and the amount of rain has just lessened. And I would come from the Midwest where it rains all the time. And even talking to my dad back home, the weather there is nowhere near what it was before. But yeah, Jerry, that's a really good comparison, because I feel whether we stay connected or whatever forever, like this community, Altadena and the Palisades, have a bond, have a connection. There's another Mac admin, Sean Collins, out of the Palisades, who has since left the area and moved east and taken a job with Apple. But he actually posted on LinkedIn first. And I just reached out, I messaged him in LinkedIn or somewhere. I just said, hey, man, we run in the same circle. We've never met each other, but you're a dad, I'm a dad. We're both dealing right now with the same thing. If you need just someone to scream at or cry to or whatever. And we've become close because of that. And again, that's not something that happens in regular professional communities, right? It's just because of the way that our community is. And everyone helped both of us. Like, I know that there was a GoFundMe for me from the community. I just can't thank the people that I work with. And outside of disaster, like there's even like Joe at ACES, like there's no competition. Other than the big entities that get made fun of, everyone's there to help, but not even just in a disaster, but hey, this is broken. What am I doing wrong? Or someone please help me with this. So yeah, I'm here partially for that reason. I joked with Justin at ACES and said I should give a speech on business continuity in case of a natural disaster. Just joking, because I didn't have the capacity of it or to do it. But it's important, and I would strongly suggest anyone listening to this go revisit all of your insurance policies. Obviously, based on where you are physically in the world, know your potential threats and what you should be insured for. Yeah, because I have a good friend that I grew up with. I've known since 6th grade. He was here in Anaheim for a while. He's a heart doctor. And they moved to Naples. He took a position in Naples. And within 2 months, they had a hurricane and his house flooded. And luckily, they hadn't moved in completely. They had everything in the second floor, and they had like a split level. One went down, one went up, and everything was up. So thankfully, they still had a damaged house. They lost their car. So you have to know what is around you, and then whether you're owning or renting, make sure that your policy's up to date. You make sure it's at least revisited once a year. I would even say at this point twice a year if you're in a more vulnerable area. We have friends that in Altadena that hadn't redone their policy in 6 years, so the coverage on the house was of what the house was worth X amount of years ago, as opposed to, and California property values appreciate like daily. I think it's
not
important.
Just an abstract like benefit. Oh, I should get more money if something happens. It's actually, I'm going to have to spend a lot more money to replace this if this happens. So you're absolutely right about updating it. Your not only the macro scale, but your circumstances may change where you've acquired more equipment, you're doing a new service where now you're holding client equipment regularly. Your exposure can change, like you said, twice a year. So definitely review it and keep it up to date and make sure it's appropriate. And what's the saying? Plan for the worst and hope for the best. You don't want to be like a catastrophist, but at the same time, you're a living example of this stuff can happen to anyone.
Yeah. And I won't go into too much detail, but the amount of money that you pay in a year to max out your policy is nothing compared to what the benefits of having a maxed out policy will be. And it's really strange now, me revisiting our insurance policies because we don't have anything. So it's what am I insuring for? But it's just smart. It's like I used to do a lot of storage support and big, petabyte XAN or StorNext installations, and you could never convince the owner to do a backup. They would never do LTO backup. And then the moment, and it's too expensive, we can't do it. But as soon as they lose a RAID and they lose a chunk of data because it's not recoverable and there's no backup, oh, we should have had a backup. How much is the backup going to cost? And it's here, I have all this proof that I gave you 10 proposals over the last 10 years. So it's like you said, like you don't want to do the whole like hindsight thing. It's do it because you just don't want to be in the situation. And we were lucky that we had policies to begin with, because I also know people that didn't have any insurance, but it's never enough. Even the ones that I know that had amazing homeowners insurance policies for their owned property, it's not enough. It's just not enough. They're only going to cover a maximum amount. And now here in California, a lot of them are pulling out because it's such a risky business to be in. They're forking out trillions of dollars probably because of these two fires between all of the insurance companies. I don't know I may be exaggerating a little bit, but I don't think so. It's a lot of money that the insurance companies are having to pay out.
Yeah.
So
this fire we're talking about is the Eaton Fire. I'm just looking at Wikipedia right now. It affected both Altadena and Pasadena, and it killed 18 people. We haven't mentioned that yet. So talking about how this is all relative, even as devastating as what you went through, you have your safety and security and your family. It destroyed 9,000 buildings, and so it became the 5th deadliest and 2nd most destructive wildfire in California history. It's incredibly devastating, and we're spending so much time focusing on it because we know you, and also because it affected such a populous area, which is really... That's the part that's hard to imagine, like the fact that it affected it. It's in a city. Like you're having a wildfire that's actually affecting residential homes in a tightly, densely populated city. And I can't even imagine, like you're describing, the insurance payouts that must come from that. There's also there's a sort of like coordination problem with how do you then rebuild? So you have people in lots of different scenarios, renters, owners, people with varying levels of insurance. You have people that lived there that inherited their home that's like a generational home where they didn't have insurance because they're not forced to. If you have certain types of mortgages, they require certain types of insurance. If you're renting, it's probably, you already know it's a good idea to have renters insurance, this kind of thing. But there's a lot of people where they didn't have coverage. And again, some of those people, they own their house outright. So they didn't have a mortgage.
Right.
Great for them. But
the house was paid for.
Now they need to pay rent and for probably quite a while, and they need to rebuild a home.
Good point, Joe. House was paid for, and that's the first thing to slide is like insurance. Let's cap it at $500,000. When you have the cost to rebuild, like you say, which changes on a yearly basis. We're at the top of the hour, and we could go on for several more hours. But I think the one question that maybe some listeners have, and maybe to capsulize it as best you can, is this happened to you. Now you know your family's safe, and you got to hit the ground running as best you can because you still have clients. How many of your installed base, let's call it, were affected by this?
Yeah.
And how were you able to respond to clients that weren't affected by it? I think just to further go on for a moment, like Joe and I think probably roll the same way, where in my case, it might be a network attached storage device and a laptop that I'd run out the door with, but that's about it. We all roll really lightly these days. But how were you able to move forward?
Yeah, so thankfully, none of our clients were affected.
That's great.
There wasn't anything up in Altadena that we were supporting. Interestingly, I know you guys do residential stuff and I do a little bit of it, but our neighborhood is very upper class. I'm not saying that I am. We snuck into there. But I had a friend who's a graphic designer. He helped me design these flyers that we were going to pass out and just say, are you running your business? Do you work from home? Do you need lateral support when you're at home? That kind of stuff, just to get a few more clients, easy clients in the neighborhood. But we weren't really doing any support like that at the moment. We have one client actually here in the same building that I'm in now in Pasadena. Otherwise, everybody's everywhere. Not all of our clients are in Los Angeles. They're all over the country. So I luckily didn't have to deal with that. We had some clients that weren't working because of where they were, like in Venice or on the west side, closer to the Palisades. But for the most part, we actually have a really great client up in Topanga Canyon, another area that was very badly affected by the Palisades, the same fire that destroyed the Palisades. Thankfully, they were able to save their house and everything inside of it. In terms of us and, how I wasn't able to focus and support our clients to the best of my ability because I just wasn't there. But I have an amazing employee, Robinson, who did everything. He just said, don't worry about it. I got it. So he handled the majority of client facing things. I was still trying to do administrative, whatever I could. A couple other things just to make sure that I say it is know what you need to grab. That was where I was going after the insurance thing. Really know what in your physical space you have to take with you. Obviously, because we use those things, we can't have them in a bag ready to go. But if you have a good list of, I have to grab this and this, right? Because I've had to reapply for everything, any certificate, any license, anything that I need a physical copy of. I had to redo that. My kids' birth certificates, different things like that. Know what you have to grab and make sure sometimes something happens and you just don't have time. We had enough time where if I had a better list, I would have done a better job. I did okay. So yeah, that's important. Just knowing what you have to do to keep the business going. And those are the things that I grabbed. I have a jellyfish raid that I grabbed that has all of our historical stuff on it, but I didn't grab any power cables. So I get out and luckily I had a laptop in my backpack with my power brick for that. But once I got here to the office, it's, oh, wow, I don't have Mac Mini power cables. And the Pasadena store is 2 blocks away. I called my guy over there and just said, hey, man, any chance? And they gave me I shouldn't say this because I know Apple doesn't usually do this, but he had 2 old Mac Mini cables that he gave me. Wow. So just not having the standard things that you're used to having. Like I would show up to a client visit and not have any adapters. And like we all have a giant bag of adapters that we carry with us. Yep. So just know what you need to take, paperwork. And then the other thing I would say is scan everything. Don't keep paper copies. If you're not scanning everything, it's not going to go well if you ever need to do something like that. And I had a decent methodology for that, but it was the holidays, so I had a giant stack of stuff that I hadn't scanned or checks that I had. We still have clients that send us checks. I know you guys talk about that a lot, but yeah, just know what you have to grab, know what your insurance policies are, and have digital copies of everything. It is the time. And I'm sorry, I know I shifted away from your last question, Jerry.
That actually gave me a good perspective. You said that none of your clients were affected. You had your right-hand person that was there to act on your behalf. So that does answer my question.
And I would also say, just last thing, the thing that burned me out the most after this, I shouldn't use that word, but like having to deal with people on the phone, having to explain what happened days ago. Like I didn't even remember. First thing you do is shut off all your utilities, right? Because you're now paying for something that you can't do. Or you can't use. It's completely useless. But then 3 days later, I'm like, who did I call? Did I call everyone? So I had to call them all back. So having to go through and tell the story to try to get the best resolution. Can you waive these fees? And I had stuff that was sent to the house that never made it to the house that ended up here in my P.O. box 3 months later with a warning, final notice on it. So, oh, wait a minute, that's not okay. And luckily, most organizations have been great about understanding, but at the same time, they have the ways they roll and the way they do things. And it's just a process, right? That was very draining, like having to deal with AT&T trying to charge me for the equipment. Like someone even joked, just put a bunch of ash in a bag and take it into the store and say, here's my router.
Yeah,
what
like,
do
you understand now
Yeah.
like what I'm dealing with? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll leave on kind of a joke, but the electrical company, why are you shutting off your service? My house burned down. Go through the whole call of all the things. And then at the very end, she's okay, so is there a gate or a dog or any pets in between the street and the meter? And were you here for the beginning of the call or any part of the in between? And I just said, you know what? There's nothing in the way. Go ahead and send somebody up.
It was on the checklist.
Right? Like at that
Exactly.
point, there's National Guards up there. You're not even going to get to the house. So if you're at all informed about what's going on right now, you shouldn't ask these questions.
Exactly.
It's that kind of stuff was very draining, and just like having to explain it again. And come on, man, are you listening to me?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty like, I pivot, like I deal with things pretty well for the most part, but that was just, I can't say it again. I can't deal with it. And I don't like to get worked up when I know these people are just doing their jobs, but I just explained all this stuff to me. And now you're trying to sell me like an AT&T mobile plan. No, I don't want to even talk about that right now.
Wow.
Yeah, there's so many, we could go on forever. It's just been a crazy beginning part, half of the year altogether. But I'm here. I have this awesome place that I'm working out of. Thankful to the people that are providing it, and having to buy a new stapler or like a new label maker. Like those are the things that hurt the most. I had a great stapler. I had a great label maker. I don't want to get another one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Things happen for a reason.
Yeah, that's a good attitude. And we're so happy that you landed on your feet and survived this traumatic experience with your family and your pets intact and your business intact. And you live to tell us about it. And so let this be a lesson for all of our listeners out there and for ourselves to get really careful and detailed with our business continuity plans, starting with insurance, having some kind of go bag, knowing what you need to grab if you're going to have to evacuate, knowing what the concerns are and the threats and all. And and just having a good kind of maybe go through it, like scenario plan that out and visualize it, as difficult as that may be to even imagine it. And we maybe don't want to imagine these kinds of things happening, but I think you have to actually practice some of this stuff to even imagine what this is like. And your example of a client who resists backup because it's this abstract concept. I already have my data. Like, why do I need to do this other thing? Everything's working right now. What am I concerned about? You'll imagine you click on something and you don't get your file. What do you do? Oh yeah, that would suck.
And we all test restores, right? That's part of our maintenance, right? We go in and we make sure we can restore files. That is what, and we'll say, I had an awful job once. I will say nothing else about it. But the one thing that I was very impressed with is this person would do these regular, I don't know what they called it, but they would say the office is inaccessible today due to whatever the thing could be that might happen. Do we have a plan? And they would test it. And it was a full day, maybe 2 days, where you do exactly what you just said, Joe. Can put it into practice. Like, how good at it are you going to be? And some of us live in a place where likely you're never going to have to deal with something, but times are changing. Climate's changing. Areas that didn't have tornadoes are having tornadoes. Wildfires are happening. There was one on Long Island. There was a wildfire right after our fire. New
Jersey, South Carolina. This is all this year. Which, I grew up in the Northeast. I never heard about wildfires in New Jersey.
It's too cold, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to rain or there's going to be snow.
So everybody needs to prepare.
Prepare for it. I never thought in a million years that I would be sitting here talking to you guys about this, but I'm glad that I can, and I'm here. And if anybody has questions for me, you know where to find me. I'm not an expert by trade, but I am now somewhat of an expert by experience. I'm happy to talk again about it, or anything you guys want from me, let me know, because it's something that we all need to be ready for.
We'd even love to have you back on. Maybe we do like a preview of your ACES 2026 business continuity talk. We can hash it out together a little bit. We're happy to do a beta test of that, because I think I mean, it's a really important concept, not only for our own businesses, but also to
your home,
let our clients know your home as well, for sure. Our own homes and businesses, and tell your
Yeah.
clients too. Like,
Yeah.
really, you got to be
Check their
aware of
insurance.
this.
I know we do the cyber stuff, but just same thing, man. Because it's if you're really doing a good job consulting, you're talking to them about like they're working from home, like their home is part of their work ecosystem.
Yeah.
It all matters. So yeah, it's
That's a great point.
yeah, definitely.
Yep.
So I appreciate you guys again. Like I wouldn't have been able to survive the way I survived without this community, and the love that I got at ACES and in person was amazing because it's not the same, but what I have received from Slack, text, phone calls has been great. But being able to see people and hug people and have a beer with them or whatever, it's great. I think it's a powerful force we're all a part of.
Absolutely.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
We're happy you're here
Thanks a lot.
too, Adam, for sure.
Thank
And
you.
again, when people go through something very traumatic and troubling like this, there's that respectful distance that we all want to keep. And we're glad
Sure.
enough time has passed that you can at least hold it together for a little while and just speak to us and share a lot of insightful information. So thank you for that.
We really appreciate that.
If I could say one thing to that point, I know in the beginning, everyone is, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And I made the point, like, no, we don't, no one knows what we need at the moment, but don't go anywhere. Like we definitely are going to need help. And this goes for any disaster, whether singularly like personal for one person or larger on a natural disaster scale. Like at the beginning, you just have no idea. And the outpour of support is so overwhelming that, you know, you feel like a jerk saying, my brother wanted to send me toiletries. And I'm like, man, there's a Target like right down the street, still open. I can go. And I want to pick out my own toothpaste, but I also don't want to be a jerk about it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Everyone was so overwhelmingly helpful and wanting to be helpful. And like I said, it's like we don't know what we need. And some of us still don't know what we need because we're in from a 2,800 square foot home to a 1,000 square foot apartment. We can't take anything. We have nowhere to put it. But don't go away. Stay there. Don't make it like a thing because a lot of the help has expired. It was very scheduled, and it has some of it, the drives and things, they're slowly going away. If other people or in any circumstance, just offer it, but don't just hang out, because it may not be something. Check in. And that's the biggest thing. Just people who have just said, hey, are you okay? Or you're not okay, or whatever. Like just that message. It's a really good thing. You guys reaching out to do this is another great example of that. I want to be able to talk about it. I'm okay talking about it. More people need to know about it. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah. Thanks for being ready to talk about it, and for being willing to share and be vulnerable and open up about reliving that experience and sharing it with our listeners for everybody's benefit. We really appreciate it, Adam. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thanks again to Adam Burg of CALSO Technologies. Thank you so much, Adam. And good
Thank
luck
you guys.
with everything. We'll talk to you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.